One thing that is worth keeping in mind is that the Assisi Declaration, so that's spelled ASSISI, 1986, the WWF. Now, that's not the World Wrestling Federation, that's the World Wildlife Fund International. Invited 5 leaders of 5 of the world's major religions to discuss how faith could help the natural world. And it took place in Assisi in Italy because this was the birthplace of St. Francis of Assisi, and he's basically the Catholic saint of ecology, which means he's the Catholic saint of being kind to plants and animals. And in that, the Catholic Church and the Christian theologians who came said that Christians have a duty to take care of the earth because we exploit it, we breed animals greedily, we do this because we want food, because we want to sell them for money, we use animals for entertainment. And this is something that's mentioned in the Bible. The Apostle Paul, for example, says, listen, the whole creation is groaning and travailing because God hasn't come back because of the way, basically, we're treating it. We cause tremendous harm out there. So when you're thinking about animal experimentation, it's worth keeping in mind that the testimony of the Bible, the testimony of Paul, the opinion of the church is that human beings tend to be cruel when we don't need to be. That human beings tend to be harmful to the world when there's no need to be. So animal experimentation, if it is allowed, needs to be very, very carefully controlled. Because the temptation for human beings will be to take shortcuts and to be harmful to animals and to cause pain when there is no need to cause pain. Animals may not suffer as much as humans do. Animals, for example, don't have memories. Most animals' memories are not great. They will remember events that happen over and over and over and over, but they don't seem to have detailed memories of detailed experiences. And a lot of fish and animals at that level, mice, animals like that, don't have great long-term memories, and therefore they very quickly forget any suffering that has happened to them. And animals don't seem to form the same individual bonds that humans do. So a human who's a child and has named that child and has raised that child, if something happens to that child, has lost something which is irreplaceable. They can never have that individual child back. Animals don't have that relationship with their children and with each other. They don't have the same individuality that humans have, the same individual value to themselves or to each other. Animals don't have ambitions or plans for the future or worry what university they're going to go to or who they're going to marry. So they don't have detailed memories of the past, they don't have detailed memories of the future, they don't value each other as individuals. So if they are suffering, if they are facing death, they don't have the same dread of death that we do. We dread death because we realize that all of our plans are about to disappear, all of our hopes for the future, everything that we've worked to achieve is under threat. And therefore we dread death. Animals will not have that same dread. Nor do many animals seem to have the same dread of pain. It's not unusual for an animal caught in a trap to chew its own leg off, because they don't have the same memory and dread of pain, so it will chew its leg off to get free. So some people take that argument and say because animals don't experience suffering as humans experience suffering, it's okay to make them suffer. There's a danger there, because as I've said, people who start off by making animals suffer very quickly turn towards humans. And another danger is that we forget our responsibility towards animals. If we just look at animals, our only concern is, well, they don't suffer as much as we do, therefore it's okay to experiment on them or to farm them in factory farms where they're crammed much too close together and don't allow them to live free range where they might be happier. Or if we put them in zoos where they're quite clearly not doing well, where they're quite clearly stressed, where they're quite clearly suffering. For example, You'll remember the film Blackfish with the whale Tilikum at SeaWorld, and the treatment that Tilikum underwent in this narrow, kept in a narrow cage with very little room for movement, where it's attacked by other killer whales when it's designed to live over hundreds of miles. Now we can just say, well, but Tilikum doesn't suffer the way that we suffer. Tilikum doesn't experience the world the way we experience it, and shrug our shoulders. And what we're really doing is we're being lazy and just giving up responsibility. So simply to say that animals don't suffer the way that humans suffer doesn't really give us any excuse for ignoring animal suffering at all. There's a great danger in simply saying, well, animals don't suffer as much as we do, or they're designed to cope with pain, or they're designed to live hard lives. Animals we can use as companions. The attachment that people have to their dogs, for example, is something that I always find incredible. But dogs are naturally optimistic, cheery animals, and people can use them for companionship. We've also been able to use animals in farming and selectively breed them so that animals have helped humans become civilized, because through farming we create enough food to feed several people. And if my family can create enough food through farming to feed 10, well, that means 9 other families can go and do other jobs. So our relationship with animals is an incredibly important one, particularly in farming. The most important job in the Bible is farming. The most important job in the world is actually farming, because only because farmers create enough food for themselves and 9 or 10 or 12 or 30 others can other people do other jobs. So farming is at the very, very foundation of civilization. So our relationship to animals is an incredibly important one. But we take animals out of their natural environment and breed them to make them the way that we want them. So if we take wolves and breed them until we have domestic dogs, we have a responsibility to those animals. We have a responsibility because we took those animals and made them the way that we wanted, and therefore we should make sure that they do not live nasty, horrible lives in which they suffer. We have to treat them. We didn't create them from scratch. They're not robots. We didn't program them. We have to try to understand the type of life that they would enjoy. And we have to make some effort to make sure that those animals have enjoyable lives in which they're happy, because they're our responsibility. We took them out of the world, out of their natural environment, and bred them the way that we wanted. This applies to zoos and circuses as well. There are animals which seem to suffer in zoos, like killer whales, obviously. Predators tend not to do so well in zoos unless they're given very large environments in which to roam. But there's lots of animals which actually seem very happy in zoos. So for example, pinnipeds, that would be things like walruses and seals. They seem very happy in zoos. There are lots of animals which are happy in zoos and seem to do well there and don't seem stressed. There are some animals which aren't happy at all. And so it's not a matter of being for or against zoos or for or against even circuses, but asking which animals thrive and which animals don't. What some people debate about are blood sports as well. Blood sports, for example, would be something like bullfighting, in which people basically slowly kill a bull to death when the bull's got very little chance of surviving at all. That seems to be unnecessarily cruel. But what about a blood sport like fox hunting, which people hunt a fox down, but foxes are pests, and fox hunting actually did seem to have some sort of benefit for the environment. What about fishing? Well, you could say that fishing is being unnecessarily cruel to the fish, but we've already noted that fish don't seem to experience pain the way the rest of us do. But fishing could arguably be good for fish, because fishermen, even though they might be killing a small proportion of fish if they're doing it for sport, want clean rivers, because they don't want to be fishing in polluted, nasty environments. And so fishermen take an interest in the environment that they otherwise would not have had. So it's not as clear to say we should be against blood sports because we don't want animals to suffer. In some cases, something like fox hunting might be good for the environment, or fishing. Other sports might be terrible. Bullfighting seems to be a fairly clear example there. One last thing is the whole idea of genetic modification, and that is basically tinkering with the DNA of an animal to give it new traits. Some people say that's a terrible idea. Some people say that it's a good idea. Some people say we're playing God. Only God should create animals. It is worth noting that we have been actually creating animals for thousands of years. Farmers selectively breed animals all the time. Sheep, as that you'll find in the fields out there, cows, they're not going to appear that way out in the wild because they've been selectively bred by farmers. So, is genetic modification a good or a bad idea? The jury seems to be out on that one. It depends on how much benefit it would bring humans. It would depend on whether the